Thank you so much for agreeing to be, on board and partner with us to just, examine some of the issues. So I wanted you to just speak freely, really, about some of the stuff that you are seeing as opportunities for the diaspora to engage with the entrepreneurship ecosystem internationally in terms of the diaspora, the African diaspora, improving trade, improving, SME opportunities for entrepreneurs to partner and grow. Promoting exports of African products, tech and talent, for example. These are all things that I think this is a real great opportunity for us to figure out as a collective how we can actually make these things into a tangible reality. So maybe I'll start with Mr. Ababio from Ghana's Diaspora Affairs Office, or the Office of the President, to maybe just speak to, we talked about the year of return, which feels like moons away now. And then beyond the return in terms of, what's next in terms of solidifying the diaspora's role in coming together as an economic force for development.
Thank you, Amma, for the opportunity to be part of this business initiative and promotion of Ghana's business community in general. I really put up my thumbs for you for all the work you and your team have been doing, and I pray that you get opportunity to continue to do it for as long as possible. I think you mentioned, and you rightly so, the bars about the year of return needs to be consolidated. And it was such a big success with the year of return. Everything went honky-donkey for us as a country. Everybody was keen to come to Ghana. We were rated all over the place, appearing in almost every news item and everywhere all over. And we need to make sure that these are not just noises that were made about us, but we have the opportunity to consolidate the gains, to crystallize some of the ideas that have been floated about the people who have come here, excite them to really put their money where their mouth is and invest in our country. And that is what leads us to this beyond the return. Beyond the return, as we have been fortunate to have maintained the team that has been involved in the year of return is also going to be doing for this. But in this instance, I have to be co-chairing that committee, but everyone is in there. This time we've decided to give it a broader participation in terms of agencies. So a lot of the government agencies who felt they had only been roped in as when they were needed at the last minute are all part of that build-up. And we hope that would give it a different impetus and really push it where we want to take it. But at the bottom line of it all is what we want to do to excite the people in the diaspora to really, come in here and invest. And of course, when we say come in and invest, we do not only talk about the physical presence that they have to make to Ghana, but to look at all the structures and the opportunities and the mechanisms that will be in place to enable them to see it as a favorable place to come and invest. So that is where we are heading with all this, beyond the return. As you know, it has already been launched as a committee, a steering committee. So it's almost always in place. Unfortunately, COVID has been so unkind to us, it's really put us brakes on some of the things that we were trying to do. But we're trying to pick it up, and very soon everybody will be hearing so much and give everyone the opportunity to be part, stakeholders of this whole initiative and take it forward as a country.
Great, thank you so much for that overview. Christabel, founder of Ahaspora and a very active member in the international development community with your experience. So give us a flavor of what your thoughts are in terms of opportunities for, I know it's difficult right now to even imagine growth and, people are asking, how can we talk about scaling up when, we're in such a crisis, but this is the moment we need to plan for the future. So what are your observations of what we've just discussed and highlighted at this stage?
Amma, thank you very much for the conversation and the work that ScaleUp Africa is doing in terms of the business festival that is coming. I'm super excited to see how it rolls because these conversations are crucial to our next step, really. And that's the bottom line. I think if we take a step back and remember, like, when was it? It was when I finished graduate school, when the economic crisis in the US hit, 2005, 6, 7-ish, you know, those up to 10 actually. But you will find out that there's still some very rich people that came out of that crisis, right? And then life bounced back, and then other things happened, and then COVID hit the world. Life will bounce back, you know, and I think that is where I start from. And it's like, if we're waiting to see whether life will bounce back, you're already in the fault, because you will not make it past now, right? So the key opportunity here is for us to see COVID as a blessing. I actually put out an article that got published by Citi that was titled, "Is COVID a Blessing for Africa?" And I believe it, I actually do. The reason I believe it is that we're already seeing things that our governments, our private sector are doing that is pushing us. I think what COVID has done is to help us to pick the things that we knew we should do, that we had other priorities because we were busy doing other things, and it's telling us, just do it. And the truth is, it's just been done. And I'll give you a few examples. Example number one, this government has been talking about digitization, right, for a bit. It was happening, rolling out slowly but surely, which is what tends to happen. We'll have discussions here, we'll have stakeholder here, we'll do this, because life is normal. So we're just slowly doing it to get it right. Then COVID happened. What are we doing? Drones are taking samples of COVID to hospitals or to labs, right? Who would have thought in Africa that we'll be doing this in 2020? Let's just be real, right. You know? So you look at that, you have the same thing. Telcos are giving free data. Data is expensive, but they're giving free data for kids to access educational material so that kids who do have laptops and tablets and such can at least learn from home. We're being forced to work from home. You know, I remember, like, maybe 3 months before COVID, a conversation I was randomly having where I mentioned work from home, and somebody was like, "What is that?" It's not possible. There's no way you can fully work from home and be productive. You have to show up at 9 a.m. Look, my office people will tell you, I am not the 8 a.m. show up person. It's never happened, because it's about the productivity and the outputs, right? It's not about showing up and looking pretty, you know. But because of COVID, we've been pushed to do these things, whether or not we like it. And then we've also had to think very quickly on our feet, which are all very good attributes for how you develop a country and a continent. So for me, I think the big piece is for us to look back on what we know. I was born in the 80s. We saw no internet in Ghana. And then now we've seen internet, and today we can't think of a world without internet, right? So we understand change. I'm sure Mr. Ababio can also give some examples of things that didn't exist when he was a child versus they exist now. So for me, the African continent has this joy of being able to see fast development. It's for us to push ourselves a little bit further. And the key is building the ecosystems around the different things, right? We're all talking entrepreneurship. To me, I tell people I like to be graphical. So I tell people it's like the new doctor and lawyer when we're kids. Everybody needs to be doctor, lawyer. Today, everybody needs to be entrepreneur. But have we built the system around the entrepreneurs for them to be able to withstand these different things? Or for people to even understand whether or not they are an entrepreneur, you know, and they should be in that industry, right? So to me, first of all, that is why I think the discussions you and others are having is super important, because we're redefining. And then there's also the piece of the role of private sector. We can complain all we want. Government is not going to be the solution. And even the government understands this, right? Theirs is to take leadership, create an enabling environment, and push it out. But if private sector also doesn't catch it, then, you know, so it's a two-way streak in a sense. So I do think that the opportunity is large for the continent. Yes, now the spread is a bit more and we're struggling in different countries to stabilize things. I think we all saw that would happen. But at the same time, I do think that nobody should take it away from the governments of Africa who have responded in a solid manner, on time, effectively for COVID. And we shouldn't lose that as an opportunity for where we can go if we put our minds to it. And if citizens engage in, you know, different ways and corners. COVID will pass. The question is whether or not you're preparing yourself to be at the top when it passes. Thank you.
Right, right. Totally agree. And you're preaching to the choir here, Christabel. I think part of the conversation we're having is really, again, how, we have Cosmos Innovation Center, which I'm a mentor, and, we have a great relationship with them, and they're one of our partners. How can we replicate programs like that, like, from the private sector, bringing in the small business sector and the youth and women in particular. MasterCard Foundation have been very intentional about Africa and its strategy, especially, to support entrepreneurs, SMEs with recovery and all that kind of stuff. I mean, for me, as a member of the, business development community in terms of ecosystem building, part of what we're doing at ScaleUp Africa is really to bring all these players together to really figure out how we can transform the way that we support entrepreneurs. Because like you say, we have survival entrepreneurs who are just doing it because they need to just, it's hand to mouth and they've got to do it. But those who are able to really drill down to the market opportunities, match the need, scale up and employ more people, those are the ones that I feel like we need to kind of divert more attention, resources and funding towards. And that includes a global effort in terms of, the diaspora in particular, in terms of expertise and access to new markets for export, for example. These are all areas that we're really looking to kind of have conversations and partnerships around to promote economic growth for Africa. I mean, and people of the diaspora as well. So one other conversation that where people are having a lot is obviously things like remittances. We know the power of remittances and how that's been used as a massive tool to support people's livelihoods and well-being. But how do you reckon in a post-COVID world we can look at policy change and a real concerted effort to utilize the power of remittances for economic development? There's talk of diaspora funds and all kinds of impact funds and social bonds and stuff like that. But what do you feel, Mr. Ababio, is the role of the potential role of remittances in having plug into this conversation?
I think there's no doubt that about the fact that the government recognizes the need to really nurture the remittances that we get, in view of how big it is and the contribution it makes towards our economy. Unfortunately, I think it's also fair to remark that in the past, most remittances have all been socializing, looking to see how to support family and friends and the normal school fees, etc. Of course, paying school fees is an investment of some sort, yes, and it should be rightly recognized as such. But of late, I mean, given that free SHS and other things have come in, there's the need to see exactly what if those remittances and others are not coming in for those purposes. They should be redirected towards other things that we need to do. As a government and working with other international corporations and institutions, our main priority is first and foremost to make sure that the cost of remittances is manageable, is reduced to the extent that the maximum remittance that the individual is sending to the country can be realized. And once that is being realized, to build a confidence in our systems as a general macro system in the country, to enable the diaspora to have faith, to be able to invest with the SMEs, to do businesses with them, channeling them, of course, through the right institutions. And therefore, the cleanup exercises that have been undertaken in the financial environment, making sure that healthier institutions remain, which will have the confidence of the people who are coming to invest, and via those institutions give them the capacity to lend to the SMEs, provide the capital that they need to do things that they have to do. I think with our remittances, we also have the opportunity to, of course, make sure that the channels that we are remitting through become more and more trustworthy and regularized, to remove those third-party kind of arrangements that people tend to have with just transmitting, to really structure it in such a way that it can be beneficial to the SMEs, and that is an ongoing exercise. I'm glad to say the government has been working with, like I've said already, international bodies like the National Remittance Stakeholder Network, which we proudly work with and we collaborated with through the foreign Ministry of Finance and other institutions, to see how best these things can be done. At the beginning of this, somewhere this year, You saw the enthusiasm that was displayed by the finance minister when he talked about the Sankofa account, which we are working on in the background to make sure that that becomes a reality. That is essentially aimed at putting its offering it as a product to the SMEs, of course, and other beneficiaries who might want to take advantage of it. But there's a whole lot of things that are in the pipeline, with the aim of looking at the SMEs. This is a government that believes in the private initiatives, private enterprise, and it sees it as the building blocks, and it is the opportunity that it provides for mass employment that we are looking for. So on the basis of even what we have been doing as in respect of the one district, one factory, these are all aimed at encouraging the SMEs to take up these government projects and execute to make sure that employment opportunities are offered all over. And then in these times of COVID, it's also important to know that through this COVID alleviation fund and etc., we are looking to see how best we can assist the SMEs that find themselves in all sorts of trouble and operational issues that they have also run into. So there are all sorts of ideas and things in the pipeline that are coming up. We are coming up with to facilitate what the SMEs can benefit from even in respect of this crisis. I think it's appropriate that I quote something from the Gone with the Wind, which I suppose most people would have read as first graduates in America, which is there's as much money to be made from the ruin of civilization as in the upmaking of one. And I believe that in this context that we find ourselves, where we think everything is going down, or like Christabel rightly pointed out, there's so much that we can do. There's so much advantage that we can take of. I'm so excited when very often I get these young people from the diaspora, the youth who are coming down and coming up with ideas and coming up with all sorts of technologically, advanced ways of doing things to showcase to me, to say, Director, can you help us to see this institution? Can you help us to go forward with some of these ideas? I'm happy to, for instance, announce that in one such endeavors, some guys came to me here. They said, "Oh, we've done this marvelous thing. We think we can really be a major player in the digitization of how people buy their tickets for the tourism industry and do all sorts of things." And lo and behold, I introduced them to GT. I introduced them to Ministry of Culture and Tourism, and then, not knowing, they had something sitting there that they've awarded to some organization that they were basically, in the process of trying to realize. And these guys come up with these ideas as SMEs, with very little, not networking difficulties in the country, and therefore needing to be held hands to, do the things that they want to do. And presto, they are into something big. And they are being subcontracted to do something like that, exactly what they want to do. The other day, too, people working with all sorts of ideas as far as workflow is concerned. That is one aspect of something that I really find missing in this whole computerization. In Ghana here, it's typical to go to most offices and find a desktop sitting on somebody's desk and virtually not communicating with the next laptop.
Yeah.
Desktop,
not networked. Yeah,
not
very,
networked.
very common. Yeah.
So these are all things that the SMEs can play a part in, that is being facilitated, that we are holding them hands to get them to know what to do. And I'm excited that yes, we can push them in that direction. They are responding favorably. And of course, the COVID has created the opportunity to accelerate these developments. And of course, given a government that has a major flagship of digitization, we have almost all the ingredients to really push things forward and take it the way we want it.
Thank you. I think it's really important that we connect more with the stuff that you are doing, in terms of being very clear about the opportunities, the competencies, the skills, and the talent and the technology that we have right here and in the diaspora to plug into some of those requirements. Because I remember back in the day when I used to work in local government in the UK, I mean, it was a huge push for e-government and, back office processes and, implementing new systems to make things much more seamless. So there's an immense potential, and obviously we have the human capital to be able to optimize on that opportunity. So we look forward to supporting you in those efforts too, Mr. Ababio, to just make sure that
ScaleUp is definitely going to be up there. No?
Yeah, to just really prep the SMEs and connect them with government opportunities, because I think that's a missing link as well, because obviously government is the biggest purchaser in the local market. So it's important for us to be able to connect more with you and connect solutions that are tried and tested to procurement opportunities in government. And I think that's one thing that the ecosystem is really, really looking to achieve in terms of government liaison and having a more direct channel to opportunities like that to enable them to just scale. I mean, that's a huge and easy low-hanging fruit to achieve in a transparent way.
Yes, certainly. And that is what, this government has realized from the very onset when, for instance, we created the Business Development Ministry.
Right.
With its national, entrepreneurship programs to basically, lead in that effort. And of course, with the cooperation that this office and other institutions have with them, we are seriously attacking that, knowing that that is a key component, the development of the entrepreneurship, and that should be encouraged, and that's what we're going to be doing all along. So
great. Christabel, so from the international development scene, I mean, I've always had a little pet peeve about the number of entrepreneurship initiatives that we see. 10,000 entrepreneurs trained here, 50,000 trained here, big numbers, a lot of ideation and startup initiatives. But for us, it's about the growth element of it and what it takes to scale up a business, how we tell more stories about those who have been able to successfully scale in Ghana, across the continent, globally, of which we have several examples. I mean, what are your observations from your perspective as an international development practitioner on how, the DFIs, the donors, the big corporations as well, all have a part to play in improving the quality and investability of our SMEs?
Right. Amma, so I do work actually on youth employment and looking at the fact that we have a youth bulge, and particularly on the continent, and we're going to need more jobs, but also because, a lot of the times the public sector just can't employ anymore, so what are we going to do on the private sector side, and what are we going to do in terms of entrepreneurship, right? But I also always say, and I think I alluded to this before also, is that we need to be careful that when we're telling the story, we tell the entire story, which is that there is a fact that 75% or is it 85% of entrepreneurs fail the first time around, right? We don't tell our youth these things. So they jump in and then they go through the ranks and then they feel like failures, but that's not necessarily the case. If you go look at some of these big, amazing companies, go ask how they got there and what it took to get there. So there's a lot of information I think that we need to fix around, particularly communication, right? Communicate what the issues are and how to connect the dots, and I think Ms. Ababio picked on a few of the issues that are happening that a lot of people don't know. We need to connect the dots. We need to ask questions, but we also need areas where the access to information is in one place and easy to find so that we can move forward. And I know some of that is being built. So I'm looking forward to seeing ready information that you can just tap into and then run with. But to the point around the role of development partners and all of that, like you, I don't like the numbers, because what happens is that, and it's important, let me take a step back and say it's important that we do have stopgap measures for people who are coming out of school and will have nothing to do. I'm all for that, so when you create youth employment programs for that, it's good. But what we're finding is that there's a lot of duplication of effort, one, and then there's a lot of gaps as a result, because everybody wants to work within their Ghanaian favorite word, mandates. And if it's not your mandate, you can't go past, So we need to have more intersectoral collaboration for things to actually work, And these are some of the areas that, and now I'm speaking as a World Bank employee, not as a Ahaspora, but these are some of the areas where we try to advise government that you need to connect the dots. For example, we just got authorization for a jobs and skills project, and we're going to be working with 5 ministries. And one of the key outputs of that project is going to be how those ministries work together to realize this youth employment solution. And I think that is really cool. really, really, really important that if we can nail that in itself, where you're not sitting on your own saying, oh, this one, I'm Ministry of Agric, so I can't touch it because I'm,
the silos. The silos.
Exactly.
It's a big problem. Right.
It's a huge, huge problem. So if we can connect those dots in the policy era, I think that is important. In terms of availability of funding, funding exists. Look, I always tell people, I just haven't figured it out, but people have money. and the truth also is they want to spend it. So sometimes they need things like ScaleUp Africa, things like Ahaspora, things like, the different areas that gives you opportunity to spend and spend credibly and be able to impact lives. So it's important also that we work on these things. But I one of the things that I've been pondering over really with COVID is, guess what? Our borders are shut. What does that mean? At some point, we're really going to have to make this Africa free trade a reality, right? We are on our own. And look at the story on the West. God bless them, but it's worse than our story. What does that tell us again? I feel like there's been some leveling of the economic playing field as a result of COVID. And we need to really assess that and see what opportunities exist for companies. And yes, development partners exist to support, not to lead, So governments are still going to be key, but it comes from how the governments lead. And we've seen it happen. I mean, our finance minister has led African finance ministers together with the South African finance minister to ask for debt relief in a way that we've just never seen before. So it's happening. And the key is that we need to make sure that we don't miss the boat and we don't rest on our laurels, because we can't, right? COVID will happen, it will go, and we'll be so excited that now we can go back to your return parties that we may just forget, that there's some very crucial things that we started that we need to take forward. Yeah. So we exist to try and help build things to scale because the financing is available, but within the scale is quality. And I think that quality element is very, very, very important. And a big one, maintenance of all of these programs that we're going for. Where were we 10 years ago and where are we going to be in 10 years? If we can ensure that our programming and our systems are sustainable, I think that would be good. Sustainable past political transition. Let me just say it. I think, from where I sit and the work I do, I see how much we lose because of that switching in systems. So for some of these things, and I'm sure Mr. Ababio will agree with me fully on this, pick digitization agenda. Pick where we are now on that. If, for example, January 2021, there's a different government and that government decides they won't continue it, that's not going to help Ghana. I'm sorry, right? So the question becomes, and in the past, we can look at the same things. The question becomes, how do we ensure that we can have the things that are system building, not people, systems, that they continue for a very, very long time. And so that includes making sure that there are laws and all of that for them to sit. But I think if there's anything for citizens to push, is to ensure that we maintain the systems and then we just keep going and building on it, because everything starts small, right? And that's how we'll go to scale. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such good points there. Mr. Ababio, any final comments on that, like in terms of sustainability and, the international community and development finance, how we keep a concerted effort in an integrated way as partners?
I think you are right. That as we need to have that continuity, we need to have the sustainability, we need to make sure that you remember just before we went, we started this recording, we were talking about how perhaps even constitutionally we need to make sure that governments perhaps last longer than this just mere 4 years to enable some kind of meaningful programs to be initiated and really taking a longer, basically implemented for a while before, all sorts of things do happen. And of course, ideally, to even have, sustainability, not just in terms of the programs themselves, but, for government to be able to do what they really set out to do. And that's, of course, a choice of the people to determine that. But this is all part of building the confidence in general. If I'm an investor looking to come in and support SMEs, looking to come in and invest, I need to know that, what I'm putting where I'm going to be putting my money. It's got a little bit of, time to go for it to get some rewards for me to be able to make it worthwhile. So that is all very important. I think overall, yes, we are fortunate that some of the things that we have done, despite the noise that we tend to hear from, all sorts of things that, we don't get to see government as a continuum. Fortunately for us, our development of this fourth republic is really a little bit perhaps far exceeding my expectation in terms of that than we can think of in the past. So yeah, we are going there. We are not there yet, but it is for us to realize the need to really, have that sustainability, to really carry it all for as long as possible, to really get the maximum from whatever initiatives we put in place. And that is very, very important. So on that basis, I would say yes, organizations like yours, ScaleUp and all the other, high-tech companies that have come in to do the incubations of, holding hands of all these nurturing businesses, etc., would have to really, be assisted in every way possible by governments to enable them to also play the roles that they really want to play. And I'm excited that, we have got that working relationship with the private sector and encouraging them to also, play their part to really keep our diaspora and our SMEs and connected and networked and, do as much as possible. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
Indeed, I totally agree. And I thank you both for making time to start off the conversation. I thought it very important to have the diaspora conversation because we know the power of diaspora and how we need to get together to make it a real force to reckon with in a post-COVID economy and in a post-COVID world. So we'll definitely be connecting more and hopefully working more closely together to kind of coordinate some of the efforts on the recovery side of things. And yeah, we'll be in touch soon, guys. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Amma.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
See you soon. Thank you.
Me too. Take care.